Let me ask you something. What is the actual point of education? Is it really just about collecting facts, passing exams and landing a job? Or is it supposed to be something much, much deeper? Well, over a century ago, the incredible Indian spiritual leader Swami Vivekananda tackled this exact question. And his answer, it was a radical call for what he called a man-making education. And that's the vision we're going to dive into right now.
This quote, wow, it just cuts right to the heart of Vivekananda's critique, doesn't it? He saw the education system of his time as this frantic exercise in just stuffing our minds with information, with no real understanding, no real digestion. He famously said that if education was just about information, then libraries would be the greatest sages in the world. In his view, this whole system was just creating what he called intellectual pack animals, people just carrying a heavy load of knowledge without ever knowing its true value.
So for Vivekananda, this wasn't just, an inefficient system. It was so much worse. It was a dehumanizing one. He saw this overemphasis on a scientific and mechanical way of life as reducing human beings to the status of a machine. Maybe technically sound, yeah, but spiritually and morally totally bankrupt. Okay, so this slide breaks it down perfectly. It shows the two opposing views, right? On the left, you've got what Vivekananda called negative education. It's just book learning, collecting facts, which he felt turned people into slaves, totally unable to think for themselves. But then, on the other side, you see his man-making vision, an education that's all about building a life, making character, and truly assimilating ideas in a way that empowers you to stand on your own 2 feet. So, if that was the problem, what was his solution? Well, it was a simple but honestly profound shift in perspective. He argued that real education isn't about pouring information into an empty mind. It's about drawing out the incredible potential that is already there, inside every single one of us.
And this is it. This is his core philosophy, all summed up in one powerful sentence. For Vivekananda, knowledge isn't something external, it's internal. Think of it like a fire hidden inside a piece of flint. That perfection and knowledge, it already exists within you. So the job of a teacher isn't to lecture you, but to be a facilitator, to help you remove the obstacles so that inner knowledge can just shine right out.
And he saw this as a really clear 3-step process. First, you develop your mind and all its abilities. It's about fulfilling our human potential, self-actualization. Second, you work towards moral perfection. And third, the final step, developing our potential divinity, which he called self-realization. It's a complete system designed for the entire human being. But this brings up a huge question, right? How do you actually do this? How do you manifest that inner perfection? For Vivekananda, the answer wasn't some complex curriculum or a pile of books. It was a single, unbelievably powerful tool: concentration. And he was absolutely certain about this. He believed that the ability to focus the mind was the only true way to gain knowledge. Get this, he even said that if he had to do his own education all over again, he wouldn't even study facts at all. He would just develop the power of concentration. And with that one perfect tool, he could grab any facts he needed whenever he wanted. And this is where you can see just how universal he believed this key to be. A chemist in a lab, they focus their mind to understand the elements. An astronomer, they focus theirs through a telescope to unlock the secrets of the stars. And a yogi, they focus inward to realize the nature of the self. See, the object changes, but the method, that intense power of concentration, it stays exactly the same. So how in the world does someone gain this immense power of concentration? Well, he pointed to the ancient Indian ideal of brahmacharya. Now, this is a pretty deep concept. It's often translated as continence, but it's so much broader than that. It's really about conserving and directing all of your energy, physical, mental, and emotional, towards a single point of focus. It's about purity and discipline in everything you think, say, and do. By channeling that energy, the mind becomes incredibly sharp, memory becomes almost perfect, and the power to concentrate just grows and grows.
And this focus on the individual, it all builds into a much bigger vision. Vivekananda wasn't just trying to reform education for one person. He was proposing a whole new future for humanity by bridging the gap between Western progress and Eastern wisdom.
He saw science and spirituality not as enemies, but as two sides of the same coin. They complement each other. Western science had mastered the external world, right? It brought us material prosperity and rationality, but it was incomplete. Eastern spirituality, especially the philosophy of Vedanta, which is one of the main schools of Hindu thought about the nature of reality and the self, it provided the tools to understand our inner world. For a complete human being and a complete civilization, you absolutely needed both.
Vivekananda himself laid out this powerful formula. His ideal was crystal clear. You take the rationality and technology of the West, and you combine it with the profound inner wisdom of Vedanta. This whole synthesis is guided by the discipline of brahmacharya, and it's powered by what he called shraddha, which isn't just blind faith. It's a deep-seated, confident trust in your own divine potential.
So you might be thinking, okay, this is all fascinating, but it's from the 19th century. Why does it still resonate so powerfully today? Well, because Vivekananda's ideas weren't just abstract thoughts. They were a passionate call for social transformation that is, frankly, still incredibly relevant. He was a fierce advocate for universal education, decades and decades ahead of his time. He believed that keeping knowledge locked away with a few elites was the main reason for India's downfall. He called the neglect of the masses, and especially of women, the country's great national sin. He used this simple, powerful analogy to make his case for women's education. A nation just can't soar to its full potential if half of its population is being held back. For him, uplifting women wasn't just about social justice. It was a practical necessity for the country to move forward. And his vision for women's empowerment was unbelievably progressive. He didn't believe men should be the ones dictating the terms. No way. He argued that women must be given education and put in a position where they could solve their own problems in their own way. They weren't supposed to be imitators of men, but to grow into modern versions of the strong female ideals from India's past. And if you look at the long-term arc of this kind of progress, it's just staggering. I mean, sure, many forces contributed, but this dramatic rise in female literacy in India really reflects the very social revolution Vivekananda was calling for. To go from just over 7% in the mid-20th century to over 65% 60 years later, it just shows the powerful impact of prioritizing education for everyone. And that brings us right back to the central question, a question for you, really. Think about our education system today. Think about your own experiences. Are they designed to help us manifest our own inner perfection? Or are they just treating us like empty vessels that need to be filled with facts? Vivekananda's challenge to create a man-making education is a call that still echoes today, urging us to seek something more from learning and from ourselves.